Copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Free beer. Now that I have your attention, please don't sue me for the love of glob. Copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is used permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. In other words, look, just don't sue me. Just come on. Read the disclaimer? Good. Spooky right disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, you have much better things to do than to sue some kid YouTuber for talking about movies in a YouTube video. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, I pity whoever does not have anything better to do than to sue some kid on the internet with less than 100 subscribers. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, don't sue me. Don't autocorrect. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, don't sue me at Christmas time, Ebenezer Scrooge. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, if you haven't sued me in the last 3 years, I don't think you're going to now. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, wait, I don't even need to have a copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, don't sue me. You've already gotten your revenge on me by delaying these films. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, come on. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, do not sue me. Do not sue me. Don't sue me. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, if you do sue me, I'll rickroll you. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, you figure it out. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, if you do sue me, I'll release the hound. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, do what Bob Ross says. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, you can read. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, be nice, man. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, don't sue me. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, other words. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, sue me and I'll reveal to the world your chicken secret recipe. In other words, copyright disclaimer. In other words, don't sue me. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, please, for the love of God, do not sue me. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, if you do sue me, I wish I could dislike your existence. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, if you do sue me, I will turn you into a Pac-Man ghost, cursed to half existence in a black abyss, where you cannot speak, touch, taste, where you can only chase a yellow ball for all eternity that you will never get. My God, that was dark. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer. In other words, if you do sue me, I'll send my spider goat after you.